You hear that? Yes, this brings nostalgia, right? This is one of the greatest intro in gaming history. This is the PlayStation 2. Remember when life was just a little bit simpler and you could just pick up any game from a store and enjoy it? Growing up as a kid, I really admired one of my favorite consoles, the PlayStation 2. It was one of those consoles that every kid at your school owned. This was back when you had to look through gaming magazines in order to find a review on a game. I just remember the selection of distinctive games that the PlayStation 2 had to offer. I mean, the GameCube and Xbox also had a wide variety of distinctive games, but nothing compared to the PlayStation 2. Literally, the PlayStation 2 had a game for everyone. I mean, for everyone. There was two things that I really was into during the mid 2000s, and that was wrestling and anime, and the PlayStation 2 offered that. Like seriously, it had a huge library of just a ton of anime games and a ton of wrestling games. Let me not even bring up one of the greatest wrestling games ever, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. I just remember playing this game religiously like no tomorrow with my middle brother. The game had over 65 wrestlers to choose from the roster. It's based on what would you call during that time in WWE, the Ruthless Aggression era. So the game had major wrestlers that were just starting their careers before they became legends of today. Wrestlers like John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Batista, and Randy Orton. They also had a good range of wrestlers that made a mark during the Attitude Era, like Kurt Angle, Undertaker, Edge, Shawn Michaels, Eddie Guerrero. You get the point. The roster was incredible. The thing that shocked me the most was jumping ship from playing Raw 2 on the original Xbox, because we only had the Xbox during that time, and also for a long period of years we only owned the Xbox. So coming from that to playing SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, you start to feel the smooth gameplay and the arcadey fun compared to the more clunkier Raw 2 on the Xbox. The season mode on SmackDown Here Comes the Pain was even more major fun. I remember using my created character to run through the career mode, and since my brother and me share the same memory card, his character was also in my career mode, and he already completed his career mode in Raw. So he held the World Heavyweight Championship, and since he completed career mode, I chose to pick my character to be in SmackDown. So I was trying to beat the career mode to get the WWE Championship. I just remember doing this favor for my brother. I used to play all of his matches with his created character, so that way he can be able to keep his World Heavyweight Championship. And this will happen in every pay-per-view match in career mode. So I would have to play with his creative character and also my creative character in SmackDown. It was just fun. Like, I still enjoyed playing as my brother's creative character. Overall, Here Comes the Pain was one of my favorite wrestling games, or even PlayStation 2 games in general. This doesn't even end at Here Comes the Pain, because now you got SmackDown versus Raw 2006. Now this was my game. This game was pretty evolutionary to me, and once again you had a big roster from SmackDown to Raw, a great career mode which included voiceovers from wrestlers, a implemented stamina system which was all new to me since I didn't play the original SmackDown vs Raw, and the general manager mode. It also included the locker room mode, which was a feature where you customize your locker room with the colors, trophies, championships, and all that. You can be able to customize all of that. I always wanted to 100% the game, which was collecting all the championships, collecting all the wrestlers, and do certain challenges. You know, back when games had unlockables instead of DLC and microtransactions, there was a Buried Alive match, fire ass entrances, a killer soundtrack. Man, I just love this game so much. It was literally my childhood, and I wish I can go back and relive the memories of the fun I had with this game. We also own SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, but it's funny because we literally bought that game last after playing SmackDown vs. Raw 2006 and Here Comes the Pain. Overall, wrestling games was one of the most finest genres of video games for the PlayStation 2. You can't tell me that one person did not own a wrestling game on their PlayStation 2 library. So now that we talked about wrestling games in the PlayStation 2, I want to move on to the next genre, and that's fighting games. Man, fighting games on the PlayStation 2. Now here we go. This is my favorite genre of video games in general, so you can just imagine how much fun I had playing fighting games on the PlayStation 2. probably had the best fighting game library on any single console in history. So the first fighting game that I want to start off with is Tekken 5. My gosh, this game is legendary. The best Tekken game to me, hands down, with Tekken 3 being the second best. As you start the game, it starts with you playing this virtual spaceship game that you just start shooting random shit on the screen. And once you press start, you see one of the best intros in gaming history. You see Heihachi and Kazuya fight side by side against the army of Jacks, and in the middle of it, Kazuya betrays Heihachi by throwing him into the middle of the horde. You see Kazuya smirking, he jumps out of the temple, and Heihachi is jumped by a swarm of Jacks, and one of them ends up doing a self-destruct on Heihachi. Then you see Raven reporting, and all you see on the screen is Heihachi Mishima is dead. After that, you hear this fucking song, I'm here now, and you see Asuka on top of the building with a bike, and then they show all the characters. It was just so dope when I was younger. Like, it still gives me chills to this day. The game had a couple game modes. They had arcade mode, they had story battle, they had time attack, survival mode. All of these modes were almost in every single fighting games. They also had the Devil Within mode, which is kind of like Tekken Force, but you play as Jin in this one. I kind of didn't really enjoy this game mode, but it was still a cool feature to have in the game. They also had the option to play the original arcade versions of Tekken 1 through 3, which was an amazing asset for the time. Anyways, the game started you with about 21 characters. You had to unlock the rest of the characters by playing the story mode and story battle. It's basically an arcade mode, but with a couple cutscenes in between. And the thing about this is, this was a time when it was simple. You had this story for the character you're playing as. You fight, you get to the last boss, there's 8 stages, you beat it, and then you get an ending for that character. It was just that simple. Now it's too complicated for them to make something like this. My two go-to main characters in this game were King and Christy Montero. Man, I was so obsessed with Christy Montero, literally. Like, I mean, she was one of the hottest gaming females to me. And for King, I used to play him in Tekken 3, so I just remember most of his moves from that game, and also his 10-hit combo. Now, let's not also forget the beautiful stages and soundtrack from this game. Like, my god, they were really hitting it up in the studio with the soundtrack. One of the best fighting game soundtracks in general. My personal favorite was the waterfall stage, and the music for that stage was just beautiful. Overall, Tekken 5, the amount of memories I had with this game can be countless. Like, I could even play this game in 2025 and I could still have a good time with it. Now, the other fighting game that I had a lot of memories with that I want to talk about is Urban Reign. This game was also developed by Namco. It is a 3D beat 'em up that plays in its own style. Each character you play as or unlock, they have their own fighting style. You will have one character, his fighting style will be like brawler, another character will be boxing, another character will be Muay Thai, and you guys get the gist. But I remember loading this game up, and mind you, I found out about this game from this demo disc that came with Soul Calibur 3, which is another game that I will talk about. But as soon as you start up the game, you hear the voice of Steve Blum saying, "Nobody's innocent." And then it plays like this low tone guitar solo song while this opening is playing, and you just see Brad Hawk just talking, and you see him describing the whole plot of the game, basically talking about the city and how it has gang rivalries, corrupt officials, and organized crime. Then later during the intro, you hear like this heavy ass metal song, this killer song that just goes crazy, and I'm like, oh shit, this is fire. And you just see a bunch of gameplay, like them fighting and all of that, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is gonna be something. So yeah, this game, man, like after the intro they tell you to create a profile. You create a profile, and then there's the main menu. You have a couple game modes. They have free battle, mission mode, story battle, and a couple others. I believe the story mode was the main part of what made this game unique, because the game had over 100 missions. They even described that in the back of the cover, I believe. The game had over 100 missions, and I feel like that was something big back then, because it just shows that the game was gonna be worth your money that you're spending. And let me tell you, this game was challenging. In the story, you play as Brad Hawk. You sometimes squad up with other characters in the game, so sometimes you were tag team with these characters and you will have to take out these people that you fight in the story mode. The gameplay fighting system is simple. You have strikes, throws, and grapple counters slash reversals, juggling, and there's also weapons that are added to the game that you can pick up and just beat someone up with it. The game also had about 60 characters to play as, and it also included the guest characters from Tekken, which is Paul Phoenix and Martial Law. You could get this after you beat the game twice. The multiplayer slash versus mode in this game was hella fun. I just remember playing this game with my brother, playing the free fall, and it will be us handling one of the AIs, and at the end of it we would just battle against each other. Again, the last thing I'm going to talk about in this game was the soundtrack. It's just a bunch of heavy metal badass soundtracks that it just plays in the background as you're beating the shit out of somebody. Until this day, this game is still fun. I just beat the game not too long ago on my Ambernick, and I also have it on my Steam Deck, so I'm gonna replay the game again. But this game is one of those games that I would consider being timeless. This game will never get old, and I can always go back to play this game. Now, the next fighting game that I want to talk about that was on the PlayStation 2 is Def Jam Fight for New York. Man, this game was a hit back then. This game was released in 2004, so during that time, hip-hop culture was literally so influential and big during that era. Me personally, from growing up in New York, this game was really relatable in terms of the fact that the game took place in New York City. Like, it had places like 125th Street train station, it had fighting arenas that was in Harlem, the Heights, the Bronx, and all that. I was just like, wow, they really hit it with the locations. I first originally got this game on the Xbox, but the Xbox version for some reason was busted. Like, I couldn't go past a certain point of the story mode because of the disc. I believe so. When that happened, I was like, nah, I'll just get this game on the PlayStation 2. So here I'm talking about it now. I consider it a fighting game, but many people consider it a wrestling game or like a brawler game. I don't know why, but it's literally a fighting game to me. You're literally fighting with fists. Even though it has grapples, it doesn't mean that it's a wrestling game. And even though you're fighting in, sometimes you're fighting in arenas that have rings in it, it's not like Def Jam Vendetta, which is literally a wrestling game. But here you have combat, you could do different styles, you're fighting back to back, you're doing all this crazy shit in that game. So I consider it a fighting game, and that's just me. I don't care, nobody can change what I think about it. It's a fighting game. So in this game, just like Urban Reign, each character has a set of fighting styles. So some characters will have a mix of wrestling, street fighting, kickboxing, martial arts, or even submission. The game had over 67 characters. Yes, 67 characters, and it contained hip-hop legends like Snoop Dogg, Ludacris, Method Man, Redman, and Busta Rhymes, but also had a couple of celebrities like Danny Trejo, Carmen Electra, and Henry Rollins. It had a bunch of match options like 1v1, 2v2, demolition match, inferno, subway match, and window match. And then they also had the story mode. The story mode had one of the best stories you can play in a fighting game. You play as a custom created fighter who saves underground crime boss D-Mob from the cops and gets recruited into his crew, rising through New York's brutal fight scene. As you battle rival gangs and take over fight clubs, you clash with Crow, who is Snoop Dogg, a ruthless rival crime lord who wants to control the city. So you gotta put on fights in these different clubs and different places in NYC to take over and try to take down Crow and his crew. It's unfortunate that this game costs so much money now that many people can't get their hands on it anymore unless they own a copy already or they have it on emulation. But since it costs so much money to have license, to pay for these hip hop songs, to pay for these rappers in the video game, it just costs too much money to make another Def Jam game, which is really unfortunate because I would have loved to see another Def Jam game, but we're probably never gonna see one ever again. So this is the only chance and only time you can ever play a fighting game with rappers in it. And it would have been really cool to see the modern day rappers in a fighting game like this. Like, imagine playing as like Lil Uzi Vert or like Ice Spice or something like that. Like, it would have been really cool to see these modern day rappers in a modern day rapping fighting game like another Def Jam. It would have been dope, but unfortunately we're probably never gonna get that. The next and last fighting game that we're going to talk about is Soul Calibur 3. This game, mind you, I had Soul Calibur 2 already on the original Xbox where Spawn was a playable character, and I love Soul Calibur 2, but the thing that changed the game from Soul Calibur 2 to Soul Calibur 3 was the fact that Soul Calibur 3 was one of the first fighting games where you could create your own character, and that was so unique to me during that time. Like, creating your own character with your own unique style of fighting games never really had that during that time. There's even this game mode that plays as an RTS. It was called Chronicles of the Sword, and this was still to this day the most unique single player experience for a fighting game, aside from Conquest mode and Mortal Kombat Deception. But from that, this game had a huge roster with over 25 playable characters, including 3 brand new characters who were Tira, Zaslamel, and Setsuka, and also had a bunch of bonus characters. It also contained different shops where you can buy weapons, clothes for your created character, and other things as well. Yeah, this game, I have numerous memories with it, and it's possibly my favorite Soul Calibur game of all time. If not, it is my favorite Soul Calibur game of all time, and I just remember buying this game multiple times because of the fact that there was a problem with the disc that would cause the game to get corrupted on your memory card. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I genuinely remember that, so I had to rebuy the game multiple times, and that kind of pissed me off, honestly, but it is what it is for its time. For this game, I used to main Talon, which was the girl with the tom fuzz. I don't know why, I just found her so adorable when I was younger, and I loved her catchphrase and her connection with the wind. She also just genuinely was a really good character to play as. She had a lot of combo strings, and she was also fast paced. To me, Soul Calibur 3 was a classic gem on the PlayStation 2, and even without any inclusion of a guest character, I still feel like it really holds up against its more popular prequel, Soul Calibur 2. Now, I'm gonna conclude fighting games. There's obviously more fighting games I could talk about that I played on the PlayStation 2, but we're gonna go on with the next genre of games on the PlayStation 2 that I'm gonna talk about, and that is anime games. There's a huge number of anime titles that was on the PlayStation 2. Like, the library of anime games almost covers all of the games on the PlayStation 2. So the first one that I'm gonna start off with all of the Dragon Ball Z games. We talk about Budokai and Tenkaichi. We're not talking about sagas or anything in between there. No Super Dragon Ball Z or anything like that. I never owned any of those games, and I know that sagas was not a good game, so we're gonna focus more on the Budokai and Tenkaichi series. I'm gonna put them all in one because I can go on forever if I talk about each of the memories that I had for these individual titles. The first one I'm gonna start with is Budokai 3. While I did play Budokai 1 and 2, I feel like I mostly just played it to fight against my brother rather than playing it as an experience to unlock all the characters and playing the story mode. Which I did play the story mode for Budokai 1, and I enjoyed all the cutscenes that were recreated from the anime and the mini games that were included in the story mode. Budokai 2 was my least favorite in the series, only because I felt like there wasn't much added apart from Budokai 1, and also didn't like the story mode, which was like this little board game where your little head will move around the board after you fight your opponent. And Budokai 2's story ran through the Majin Buu saga, so you had the option to play as Goten and Trunks, Gotenks, and all the versions of Majin Buu. The one thing about these Budokai games is that you will have to unlock everyone's set of specials for the most part. So for instance, if you wanted to get a fusion or a special for that character, you will have a capsule shop. The capsule shop is randomized, so sometimes you will have to boot up the shop every 5 seconds, going back and forth until you actually get the special that you want. Now let's go back to my favorite one out of the series, Budokai 3. Budokai 3 was another story. We purchased the greatest hits version of the game. It had all the sagas, Dragon Ball Z, all the way up to the Majin Buu saga. So it included some extra characters like Broly, Omega Shenron, and Super Saiyan 4 Goku. So obviously it did a little bit of GT stuff. I just remember playing and unlocking Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta and doing all these crazy ass moves like Big Bang Kamehameha and doing the fusions during mid battle. I've played countless battles with my brother. It was just a treat, man. You could never have this type of experience with any modern day Dragon Ball Z games. And then we obviously have Tenkaichi 1 through 3. The original Tenkaichi was the one where me and my brother really went at it. The gameplay is way more different than Budokai, whereas Budokai is more of a 2D fighter, while Tenkaichi, now you can maneuver around the whole arena. It plays completely different from Budokai, and a lot of people didn't like the change from Budokai to Tenkaichi, but to me, it was still fun. They had things like dragon rushing towards your opponent. Most of your combos are done more simply. Instead of pressing a set of buttons for combination attacks like in Budokai, instead Tenkaichi was more button mashing. The gameplay fighting was also really fast compared to Budokai. Like, it really genuinely felt like you was actually playing as Dragon Ball Z characters now. You can fight underwater. There was a lock-on system for locking onto your opponent because the arena that you're fighting on was that big. The game had the biggest roster in any fighting game or Dragon Ball Z game in general. We're talking hundreds of characters from the Dragon Ball Z universe. It was insane for its time. There was a bunch of nonsense characters like Arale, Frieza's minions, Saberman, and it gets even crazier in Tenkaichi 2 and 3. But the thing that really was intriguing for Tenkaichi 1 was the intro. That shit was so fire because this is probably the first time a Dragon Ball Z intro for a video game didn't have an intro that was in anime form. No, it was done in the form of a cutscene, and it was so fire. All I can say is that while I do think that Budokai 3 is the best Dragon Ball Z game to me, I do think that the Tenkaichi series definitely holds up. It's very nostalgic for a lot of people growing up through the 2000s. Now, the next anime game that I want to talk about that very few people knew had a game and is very underrated is Samurai Champloo Sidetracked. Me and my brother was a huge fan of the anime at the time, and so when he saw that there was a game on the PlayStation 2, he immediately had to buy it. And this game was released in 2006 when the 6th generation of consoles was fading away into the next generation of consoles. A lot of people still to this day, like I said, doesn't know that Samurai Champloo had a game. A key thing to know about this game is that while it is based on the anime, the game was not a direct continuation of the anime's plot. Everything from the anime carries on, including its main characters, Fu, Jin, and Mugen. Its hip-hop influences is still there, and the soundtrack is really good for this game. It also was developed by the devs who worked on Killer 7, No More Heroes, and that's Grasshopper Manufacture. The game plays like a hack and slash action game, has a feature called the Groove Meter. The Groove Meter is the better you fight, the more the music syncs up, and you can unleash powerful finishing moves. The game had 3 playable characters, including the main characters from the anime, Mugen and Jin, and also has a new original playable character. His name is Warsoul. Every character had his own original story and nothing was followed from the anime. I do wish that they could have had this game be the next sequel to the anime, but Samurai Champloo is already perfect as it is, so we don't need to touch it anymore. Wow, there's a lot of anime games that I can talk about on the PlayStation 2 that I've played. The last one that I'm going to finish off with is the Gungrave series. Gungrave was a very niche anime that I started watching on D4 TV when it was good. While the game originally came out in 2002, I watched the anime first before buying the game, so I used to think that the game was based on the anime, but it's quite the opposite. Now, back to the game. The game had 2 titles on the PlayStation 2. It was the original Gungrave, and then they had Gungrave Overdose. The game was a third-person gunslinging action game, basically run and gun, defeating hordes of enemies. You have dual guns and you also have a coffin weapon which you can swing around as a melee weapon. Then in Overdose they added more characters to choose from. They had Juji, who wields dual guns and had a katana, and a rock-bellied red Cadillac, which was his name, which is pretty silly, who was my go-to character. His weapons was an electric guitar. A lot of people found the game to be repetitive because they're just going through hordes of enemies shooting, but honestly at the time this game was generally still a fun experience. And while people did like the first one better than the second one, I do like the second one. And also, if you guys played this game and never watched the anime, you guys should go ahead and check out the anime. Now, before I wrap up this video, I can tell you that I can personally talk about my memories with the PlayStation 2 for a long period of time. I haven't even talked about some of my personal favorites like Final Fantasy 12, the Yakuza series, Devil May Cry 3, and Kingdom Hearts, and even more. While I didn't own the more popular side of titles on the PlayStation 2 like Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Grand Theft Auto, Metal Gear Solid, God of War, I can still say I had a pretty solid library of games that I've owned and played on the PlayStation 2. But this about wraps up my video. Maybe I can make a part 2 if you guys want it. Let me know in the comments if you guys want a part 2. And also let me know your memories of games on the PlayStation 2. If you guys got this far in the video, I thank you so much. And I just want to appreciate all of my subscribers. While it's still low, I still want to make it to 500 subscribers. So with that being said, please remember to subscribe to my channel and like this video. My name is Sam Matic, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.